This is CBC Vancouver News.
Smoke damage and water damage for a collector are a hard thing.
The downtown Langley business community is reeling after a large fire destroyed a historic building and the businesses it housed. And
everybody here is mourning, everybody is touched, many of us have family there, and so we come together.
Monday marks the one-year anniversary of Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel. In Vancouver, hundreds gather for a candlelit vigil honoring Israeli victims and the hostages who remain in captivity. Plus,
it just would be the right thing to find a way to make it up to the customers who have been wrongfully charged.
some e-bike rental companies in BC have been charging PST on the use of their bikes despite a government exemption. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. The downtown Langley business community is reeling after a massive fire tore through a historic building on Fraser Highway yesterday. The blaze destroyed a popular Mexican restaurant and multiple other businesses and displaced residents who live above the stores. The owner of Constant Collectibles, a store located next to Viva Mexico restaurant, says his store has smoke and water damage and houses many rare collectibles.
With all the one-off like prop replicas, it's hard to replace it. So smoke damage and water damage for a collector are a hard thing. So I'm not sure how much of the store is actually salvageable. So that's the kind of the next step we have to address.
He says the building where the fire broke out also housed a physiotherapy clinic, photo studio, and more than a dozen office spaces. The building has now been demolished. He says the tight-knit business community is rallying around those impacted, and they remain hopeful the historic building and the businesses destroyed by the fire will be rebuilt. A man has been arrested after police say a car was intentionally set on fire outside Vancouver City Hall this evening. VPD says the blaze was put out by fire crews, but inside what appears to be a minivan was roughly 100 liters of unburned gas in canisters. The suspect was arrested at the scene and no one was hurt. The suspect's motivation remains unknown. For now, police have temporarily blocked off West 12th Avenue in front of City Hall. A man with a lengthy criminal record is back in custody after he stole a cop car this morning, driving it into a park where families and children were gathered. Police say officers were called to East Hastings and Semlin Drive around 10:45 to assist a woman in distress. As they stepped out to help her, a man got into the unattended police SUV and drove off. The vehicle was then driven onto a field at Templeton Park where children were playing soccer and families were on the playground. The VPD is condoning the dangerous behavior, saying the 41-year-old suspect could have killed or seriously injured innocent people. Eventually, the suspect was taken down by a police dog. Police say the suspect has more than 50 criminal convictions. As the election race heats up today while on the campaign trail, BC NDP leader David Eby took shots at Conservative leader John Rustad's stance on federal gun laws and the party's pledge to end tent cities across the province.
I've heard John Rustad make a lot of promises. Unfortunately, everything I've heard him say about housing would make tent cities so much worse and so much harder to deal with. We're working hard to get people indoors. We're working with cities and municipalities. We have the Heart to Home program to get people inside, and we're going to keep doing that work. It's critically important work.
Rustad says his plan to remove homeless encampments would include supportive housing, laws to allow involuntary treatment, and units with targeted care for those experiencing severe addiction or mental health challenges.
We will be introducing laws to make it clear in British Columbia how we can address this, how we can make sure that we deal with We deal with the homeless issue and these homeless encampments. There are places, of course, that are outside of provincial jurisdiction, and for some of those places, obviously, those would be a challenge to be able to deal with, but anything that was within our jurisdiction.
BC's 3 political party leaders are set to face off in a televised debate on Tuesday to discuss topics important to British Columbians ahead of the October 19th provincial election. CBC will carry the debate live on TV, CBC Radio 1, and CBC News BC's 24-hour streaming channel. And with only 10 days until the provincial election, potential voters are sharing their concerns and priorities for the next government. We asked visitors at the farmers market in Coquitlam today what they thought were the most pressing issues facing British Columbians.
Education is a really important issue. I've got 3 kids in the public education system, and so that's something that's really, really important for us.
The most important issue for me is climate change. Obviously, the pressing issues for most voters are taxes and inflation, and I think that's very short-sighted. I think in 10 years we want to have a planet that we can pass on to our kids that's livable.
Affordable housing is important, and like climate action, as well as like reconciliation is really important to me with our Indigenous communities and working with our Indigenous communities.
Monday marks the 1-year anniversary of Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel. At least 1,200 Israelis were killed in the attack, and initially 250 people abducted, according to Israeli tallies, triggering an counter-offensive in Gaza that the health ministry there says has left more than 41,000 dead. Here in Vancouver, a vigil was held tonight honoring Israeli victims and the hostages who remain in captivity.
We're here to be part of community, and we're here to mark a year since the atrocities of October 7th in Israel. Everybody here is mourning, everybody is touched, many of us have family there, and so we come together, and you'll find all over the world, all over the globe, Jewish communities are getting together to mark this day.
The reason I'm here is because my family was kidnapped. My cousin Tal is still a hostage in Gaza. I'm very fortunate that 6 of them escaped and got out in the November exchange. There were 2 children, aged 3 and 8 years old, Yahel and Nave. And they're scarred for life from their experience, and that was, only a month in captivity, and these children are PTSD probably for the rest of their lives.
I feel empowered. I feel empowered by the fact that I can be in Vancouver, put the Israeli flag, the Canadian flag, the Iranian flag, and feel safe. And this is something that is not, happen a lot all over the world. We are under constant attack, anti-Semitic attack, and although they're trying to make us fear and afraid and hide, we're not going to, because we are going to be here, and we're going to be here forever, and we're going to make sure that the world will be better, and peace to all.
We're just here quietly standing firm and trying to show strength in the face of tremendous adversity. And like I said, my personal family's involved, so this is, it's real. It's a lot more real than when it's just a news thing on TV.
Police in Vancouver say more officers will be deployed at what they call strategic locations, including faith-based schools and places of worship leading up to tomorrow's 1-year anniversary. Vancouver's police chief says planned and unplanned protests across the city are posing a significant risk of disorder, and officers trained specially for large-scale events will be ramped up. As well, tactical response and uniformed officers will be placed at key locations in consultation with leaders of both the Jewish and Muslim communities, and uniformed school liaison officers will be highly visible during student pickup and drop-off at faith-based schools on Monday. E. coli has been detected in the water supply in parts of Hope, leading to a boil water advisory. The warning has been issued to residents in these parts of Hope. E. coli bacteria was detected in the water supply Friday. Consumers are advised to boil or treat drinking water and to avoid bathing young children in a bathtub. Use only boiled or bottled water for drinking, cooking, making ice, brushing teeth, washing ready-to-eat foods, and washing dishes or preparing infant formula. Those affected are advised to boil water for 2 to 3 minutes, use a kettle when possible, and allow it to cool before use. 3 e-bike rental companies in BC have been charging provincial sales tax on the use of their bikes, despite the government making qualifying e-bike rentals exempt from the tax since 2021. CBC's Maurice Katz has the story.
For an e-bike share rental, a short ride can cost just a couple dollars. And if provincial sales tax is being collected, we're talking about 15, maybe 35 cents per ride. But altogether, it can add up.
If people use the service on a regular basis, it adds up, and everybody is in current environment trying to be mindful of every expense they make.
CBC News has confirmed that e-bike share companies like Lime, Neuron, and Bird have charged customers PST on rentals, despite the BC government waiving the 7% tax on qualifying rentals in April of 2021. That tax exemption was put in place to encourage active transportation and covers e-bikes that have pedals, are not mopeds, and do not have combustion engines. Sheena says the companies should find a way to get that money, which has already gone to the province, back to riders.
It just would be the right thing to find a way to make it up to the customers who have been wrongfully charged a tax they shouldn't be paying.
The 3 companies that had been charging PST declined to reveal how much tax had been collected. The Ministry of Finance also declined to provide a figure. But based on documents from the District of North Vancouver, CBC News is able to estimate that on the North Shore alone, one company, Lime, collected more than $70,000 in PST since its e-bike rental program originally launched as a pilot in 2021. Lime and Bird say they've shifted their policy based on input from the province. Neuron says it hasn't received the response from the province, but will rectify the situation when it does. Meanwhile, the Finance Ministry says that if a consumer believes they have been charged PST in error, they should apply for a refund. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Vancouver Island retiree is doing his best to make a difference for the environment by creating biochar, the product of partially burned organic material like tree bark and leaves. He says he's created about 20,000 pounds of biochar over the past few years, which he says can be used in gardening and compost to enrich the soil. Claire Palmer caught up with him in Courtney.
Biochar has been specifically made. It's not just a random, sort of leftover product. We stop the process before it turns to ash. Then we've actually locked that carbon into that charcoal. I was approaching retirement, so say about 4 years ago, when I was thinking a lot about the climate change issue, and I was really asking myself the question, what could I do to make any kind of a difference? Because I felt kind of hopeless about it. I really didn't know what biochar was and didn't really quite get it, how it worked. So I read that chapter in the book on it, and then that just piqued my interest. So the process of pyrolysis, converting the wood to charcoal, you need to achieve the temperatures of around 500 degrees Celsius or hotter. And the other thing is you need to take the oxygen out of the equation. Every time we add another layer of wood onto that pile of charcoal, then the oxygen is drawn to the top of the pile, and it takes it out from the bottom of the pile. So the charcoal that's underneath that pile doesn't get any oxygen anymore. It's a double ring of steel and that gap between them. Now it's sealed at the ground level, so no air can get to the fire through the bottom. If it was able to do that, the air would hit that mass and then go through it and then up, and it would shoot your flames up and sparks up like a Roman candle. And that's exactly what we don't want to have. The biggest thing is putting it in our compost, because it's a great activator in the compost.
It's a no-brainer for us, yeah. Since Greg's been into biochar, we've been able to take our waste, tree waste, and any pallets that don't meet the grade to ship out on, we can convert that to biochar, add to our compost, and just keep that nutrient cycle going around and around. You know, as humans, we're pretty good at taking away, but when you can add something, it just makes you feel a bit like you've done something worthwhile at the end of the day, eh?
I hope this can be inspiring for young people too, because I really do believe that for a lot of young people that there's a feeling of hopelessness about the future of our world. And maybe this is a way for me to show them that actually there are some things that people can do.
Today marks World Cerebral Palsy Day.
Our experiences vary from person to person, but it's incredible to know we've been around for 70 years, and after 70 years, all the impact we're making, it's kind of perfect that it's collating right here on World CP Day.
Cerebral palsy is a neurological disability that usually occurs at birth as a result of a lack of oxygen to the brain. It can impact people in a variety of different ways depending on where the damage in the brain occurs. There is no cure for the condition yet. Still to come, widespread devastation in the U.S. in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene is set to get even worse as a new storm approaches Florida's western panhandle. That's coming up next. Residents on Florida's Gulf Coast are bracing for yet another powerful, dangerous storm just 10 days after Hurricane Helene hit with lethal force. The death toll from that monster storm rose again today as crews combed through the destruction. Yvette Brend has the latest.
In the hardest hit parts of the U.S. Southeast, the cleanup is only just beginning. Troops on the move to help with the rivers of debris.
It's absolute devastation. Even just this valley through here is decimated.
The death toll keeps rising. More than 227 people, the deadliest hurricane to hit the U.S. mainland since Katrina. More than half the victims lived in North Carolina, where tens of thousands still have no power or water. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris visited the state this weekend and helped put together care packages.
Some of the people who are most generous have the least to give.
Dolly Parton riffed off one of her biggest hits while donating $1 million to hurricane relief.
Helene, 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 you came in here and broke us all apart.
All this while another storm is expected to grow into a hurricane over the Gulf of Mexico and hit Florida by Wednesday.
Wherever Milton's going to make landfall, somewhere on the central Gulf Coast, it'll be the fifth landfalling hurricane. So, it's certainly intense.
Especially with so many still processing what Helene put them through.
I hold my foot like that.
Kathy Poole shows how she braced against her door. This couple fought to fend off floodwaters.
She really fought it.
Yeah.
I'm proud of her.
That was why I was put on this earth. My husband would have drowned if I hadn't been here that night.
Others see a reason for hope.
Hey, they thought the wind and the rain and a hurricane was going to show up, but guess who showed up? Jesus!
Finding faith before another storm hits. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
The struggle to get Canadians out of Lebanon continues. The process is taking time, and the overriding fear is how much time remains. JP Tasker reports.
As Israeli airstrikes pummel parts of Lebanon's capital, some Canadians are desperate to get out.
The hotel was shaking left and right all night long as airstrikes were blowing up so many areas around Beirut. It was crazy. People are scared.
Ahmed Araji says he asked Global Affairs Canada for a ticket out 1 week ago. The government has reserved seats with commercial airlines for Canadians and permanent residents, but Araji hasn't heard back.
Extremely frustrated because I don't know how the escalation is if it's gonna get worse or better, but from the looks of it, it's probably gonna get much worse.
On Saturday, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister asked for patience.
We still have 2,500 calls to make. We'll be doing these calls over the weekend to make sure that everybody is reached.
By Sunday night, GAC says it has contacted 5,000 people and helped about 1,000 leave Lebanon. But still a dangerous journey. Canadians Dodd and Hussein Tabaja were fleeing their home when their car was hit by an airstrike.
It's raining bombs.
That has Nick Kawaji worried about catching a flight home to Vancouver. He booked his own ticket for October 10th, but now wants out sooner.
We will be scared till the plane will be out of the airspace.
For some, the journey to the airport is risky, but waiting for a possible government-backed evacuation is dangerous too, says Canada's ambassador.
We have a plan, we are ready, but Canadians certainly shouldn't count on it.
A concern echoed by the Prime Minister.
It will be extraordinarily difficult for the tens of thousands of Canadians who are currently in Lebanon.
That's why Araji wants Ottawa to come through now.
So many people are just waiting and they don't know what the near future holds.
Canada has lined up more flights out of Beirut for Monday and Tuesday. That means up to 1,000 more people could get out. But past Tuesday, no guarantees yet for those still stuck. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Here we have a live shot of downtown Vancouver tonight. I'll have your full forecast coming up next. All right, let's take a look at our forecast for the week ahead. Let's begin with current temperatures around the province tonight. Lots of rain, a wet one for people overnight with -1 in Dease Lake. A bit warmer in Fort St. John and Prince George with a low of 10 overnight. And on the island, about 7 in Victoria. Heading into tomorrow's forecast, that rain is sticking around for some areas, but some other areas like Kamloops going right back up to 22 degrees, 21 in Kelowna, and 16 with a mix of sun and clouds in Victoria for tomorrow. Here in Metro Vancouver, we are going to have a rainy week. Monday is going to be 19 degrees and Tuesday 17, and that temperature seems to be pretty steady throughout the remainder of the week. An Indigenous-inspired short documentary titled The Salmon Forest Project has been nominated for Best Short Documentary in the globally acclaimed Hawaii International Film Festival, which opens this week.
We're all salmon nations, and
the documentary, which is funded by UBC, is set in the Heiltsuk territory. It paints a picture of an ecosystem under stress due to climate change, which is threatening BC's salmon population and biodiversity.
These connections that Indigenous or Aboriginal people have with salmon on the coast here in the Northwest has been expressed for many years, many decades, a couple of centuries. And it's just not been fully understood. And there has been people that have written about it, including myself, that still doesn't capture the essence that this film captures.
That is your late news for Sunday, October 6th. Hope you have...